Those of you who got an invite, welcome to Nerd Prom.
No matter where in the world you are, we're all Nerds International. With the hyphen.
Alright, YouTube, it's Mr. Mean coming at you from kinda gloomy Beaumont, Texas. It's a beautiful Sunday morning, about 9 o'clock here in Central Texas time zone. I got my Mountain Dew Kickstart. I'm ready to do a review. This is, as the title says, an after-action report. Last night was Saturday night, and my gaming group and I, we normally play D&D this week of the month, but unfortunately one of our players, the GM, is moving, and so he couldn't be there to GM. So I had been wanting to get this to the table. I did a review way back early on my channel, Symbaroum, by Yarninigan Press. This was successfully kickstarted, I believe in 2016, 2015. I don't remember. It doesn't say in the book, I don't believe. And again, if this was a professional video cast, I would know these things. But it's not. But the book is beautiful, as I did in my first review. It's not going to be a review of the book in this video because I've already done that. I gotta say, there's a couple games out there where the GM doesn't roll dice or doesn't roll many dice. Dungeon World is one of them that comes to mind. There's a couple other storytelling type games that are like that, where the focus is on the players. Uncharted Worlds, I don't really roll any dice as a GM. And Symbaroum is one of those games as well. The GM doesn't roll any dice. The players roll everything. It is a roll low system on a D20. Uses a full set of polyhedrals, so if you're thinking about picking this up, Mr. Mean highly recommends you do. But you'll need a full set of polyhedrals. You need a 1d20, and you'll need, I would recommend two of a d4 and a d6, and then one of your d10, your d12, and your d8. Because there are certain situations where you can get extra dice in doing certain things. I ran the starting adventure in the very back of the book, and I gotta say, it's very well done. It is very linear. It is made to get the characters together and let them understand what's going on in the world and why they're there. So I did use the pre-made characters, and it worked very well. My players were Varric, Kavaric, Orlan, Ansel, and Niha. Oh, and Carla. I had four players. I had to think for a minute. I had Afinia, Carla, Niha, and Orlan and Kavaric. So I had five. I had one. No, I did not have Carla. Anyway, I had four players. Blah, blah. Fenya, the Goblin Treasure Hunter, was played by my friend John's wife. Very cool character. She has an ability or a talent called Survival, and it gives her an extra movement every turn. And man, let me tell you, that is a cool ability, because she was able to zip around the combat and get things done. To be honest, all the characters were very competent. None of the players felt that they were kind of useless. There's a couple combat scenes. There's one big combat at the end. I don't want to throw in any spoilers in case someone's going to play this. I modified it a little bit just because it was getting late. It was already right at 9:30, 10 o'clock. We started playing at about 5 o'clock. So we'd been playing for a good 4 hours. I'd say an hour of it was a bullshit session where we were telling stories and stuff, and we deviated off scene. But for the most part, we got a good solid 4 hours in, and it was. I got over there at about 3:30, and we started playing right at 4, and we didn't stop until right at just after 10:30, I believe. So yeah, it was a fun session. The characters were very well balanced for this scene. things in Symbaroum are broken down into scenes, and then you go from there. Combat flowed really well. It took us a second to wrap. One of my players is an older gentleman, and he's an old 3.0, 3.5 grognard, and so while the dice were the system was relatively easy, he couldn't wrap his head around the mechanics and how they worked. And part of that was due to, I don't think I explained it properly to him. My friend John stepped in, and between the two of us, and when he finally read some of the abilities and stuff, because I had an extra copy. I have a personally printed copy because I own the PDF. Thanks to my good friend Brian, who sent me a PDF copy, and that's what prompted me to buy this, as I talk about in my first review way back when on the channel. But so I brought that pre-printed copy, and I left that on the table so they do it. And what I did is, you can print, if you go to their page, you can print the pre-generated characters, and it comes 2 characters to a page. So I let everybody choose what characters they want. They cut them off, and then what I did beforehand is I went to my book and I looked at each one of their abilities and their talents, and I wrote down the page number. This is a game that's very much, it would be akin to feats in D&D if you're a D&D fan. If you're a Warhammer Fantasy fan, it would be talents. It's the same thing. They give you special abilities. And so like Niho, the changeling thief, basically, he had the ability to backstab. And Orlan, the ex-Panzer Knight, which is basically just a big, heavy armored dude, was more of a leader, and his ability was to basically direct his troops. And it's funny because the old grognard Ken was playing that character, and the first thing he said out of his mouth when we chose characters was, "I don't want to be the leader." And he winds up choosing the character who is by default the leader. So it was pretty funny. But he stepped up to the plate. Once he wrapped his head around it, he took a second to read the book. Like I said, I put the page numbers to the talents on the character sheet. And I think if you're going to run this for the first time for people who have never played, at least give them time to peruse the book or have an extra copy of the PDF available, whether it's printed or on screen, so that people can look up their abilities, because backstab means a lot of different things in a lot of different games. And in this game, it pretty much is almost exactly the same as it is in D&D. Advantage in this game, they call it advantage, and you would think, oh, D&D advantage, I get to roll 2d20, and it's a d20 game. You do not get to roll 2d20. What you do get is you get a +2 to your core attribute of whatever you're trying to do. So if you're trying to hit someone, it would be accurate. If you're trying to hide, it would be discreet, that kind of thing. If you're trying to see somebody, it would be vigilance, vigilant, so on and so forth. And then the other thing it gives you is it gives you an extra 1d4 damage. The backstab ability gives the character an extra d4 of damage. If we're reading this correctly, because it doesn't say otherwise. It doesn't say if you already have advantage, you don't get the extra backstab, or vice versa. So that's 2 extra d4. The Orlan character in this game has the trait or the ability leadership. And one of the things leadership does is he gives a rousing speech or gives a tactical analysis of the battlefield, and for the next round, as long as he keeps doing that every round, and it pretty much takes his action, then he can provide you with direction and incentive and motivation, and you get an extra d4 to your damage. And you say, wow, that's not a whole lot, John, a d4, whoop-de-doo. Well, Niha, the changeling con artist, was by definition the weakest character in last night's game. The Fenya, the goblin, was very stealthy and very fast, so she was hard to kind of hit. Orlan was of House Dar, the ex-Panzer Knight, was a brick, and Kavarik is the human barbarian, who was also, he had a sword and a board, and he was just wrecking house. So Niha, being the weakest of these characters, and probably the defense of 9, Fenya has a defense of 13. So yeah, she was the weakest, or he was the weakest character, and he wind up dealing out the most damage of the PCs because of strategically using backstab with advantage and with the extra 1d4. So his dagger does 1d6. He got an extra 1d4 because of his backstab ability. He got an extra 1d4 because he was flanking the bad guy. And then because Orland was over there giving his rousing speech and tactical analysis to the players, he got an extra 1d4. So he rolled 1d6 plus 3d4. So even if he rolled super shitty, the minimum damage is 4. Most NPCs have an armor, your generic mooks have an armor of 2 to 3 with a couple of hit points. So even if he rolled crappily, he was still doing decent damage. Well, he managed to roll awesomely, and he did a shit ton of damage, and the main bad guy was soaking 6 points of damage. The cool thing about this game is, and it at first sounds very unfair, because the NPCs, the GM characters, all have fixed values. I don't roll any dice. The players roll to not be hit. So when I say the town, bandit is trying to attack you, you roll your defense versus my accurate if I'm using a physical attack or whatever. And then that is modified by whatever his accurate is. If it's a positive number, it turns into a negative number for you. And if it's a negative number, it turns into a positive number. And you would add or subtract that from your defense. And that's how hard or easy it is to actually hit you. When you're attacking someone, it's the reverse. You look at their defense, which is a fixed number, and you roll your equal to or less than under your accurate, if that's the ability you're using to hit, plus or minus their value, depending on what the circumstances are. And on average, it's usually just their defense, and you roll equal to or less than that, and that's what you roll. So it works out really well. Combat was very fast. We went through 4 rounds in less than 20 minutes, and that's with people flipping books open and looking at stuff just to make sure they had things right. But once we got the flow down, it was smooth. Like I said, and combat went really quick. I fudged the bad guy a little bit just to give them somewhat of an unfair advantage. He had a bunch of bandits that could have entered the fray, but because of their role-playing and the way they had done it, I deemed it appropriate. They basically called out the bad guy, and he answered, and he told his minions to step back, that he would deal with this, because he obviously thought he could whoop their ass. And to be honest, if he'd have got a solid hit on one of them, they'd have been dead. I did give him a bow. I deviated from it because in the book he doesn't have a bow, but the players had 3 out of the 4 players had ranged attacks, and so they were going to, in the way combat in this game works, things with range, or if they have the long quality, go first in combat if they're able to. So obviously you're not going to try to shoot a bow when a bad guy's standing right next to you. That just gives them an attack of opportunity, and you don't want that, because that's basically almost like a free hit. And they still have to go through the motions, but long story short, you don't want to do it. It's not tactically sound. Let's leave it at that. And so everyone agreed that the art is stunning in the book. Everyone liked the flavor of the world. I took about the first 40 minutes of the game describing the world, describing Devakar, the forest, and Thistletown, and the camp that they were in. And they were going to go through the Titans, which is the mountains to the south, and they were trying to get north to get to the promised land, so to speak, and all that fun stuff. And it worked out really well. They definitely got a flavor. Nobody chose a magic user, so we really didn't go into corruption that much. I NPC'd the mage from the Ordo Magica because he had the Sunstone, and that's part of the adventure. And so that worked out well, but I let the players roll all the dice. I did not roll 1 dice last night at all for anything. I let the players roll for when the magic user tried to do something. And so everything was on the players. And let me tell you, it was really nice. It's like they read Numenera and took everything that was good out of Numenera and the Strange and put it into this book and made it 10 times better. Numenera is a great system. It's just not for me. I don't like it. I don't like the lack of skills. Now, this game doesn't have skills. your skills break down to your attributes, your core attributes, and you have 8 core attributes, and it breaks down to those. So if you're trying to be sneaky, it's discreet. If you're trying to be observant, it's vigilance. If you're trying to attack somebody, it's accurate. So everybody can do everything. It's just a matter of how good they are. Your attributes are determined by there's a point buy system of 80 points. No stack can be lower than 5. No stack can be higher than 15. And only one stack can be at 15. The rest have to be lower. So you could be really good at something and you could be really bad at something, or anywhere in between. 10 is considered the average. And then you get plus or minuses whether you go above 10 or below 10. So it's a very easy system. It's very fast. We all picked up on it. They give you an intro combat to try and figure things out, and it goes really well. And it threw, like my friend Ken, it threw him off until, like I said, he picked up the book and he started reading his abilities, and he realized he's not necessarily a frontline combatant. He's more of an organizer. He's the general in the back telling people what to do. He was decently armored and he could take a pretty solid hit. And if he did hit, he hit like a freight train. He's using a 1d12 because he was proficient in two-handed weapons and he was just a beast. So if he did hit, he hit like a freight train. But he was not a killing machine. The barbarian mercenary, Kavarik, was a killing machine because he had a sword and a shield, and he had the ability with his talents he could hit with his sword and then immediately follow it up with a shield bash, and he wrecked house. He did pretty good. So all in all, we all enjoyed it. We enjoyed the mechanics. The game flowed very easy. It was nice to focus on telling the story, and then when the PCs wanted to do something, they had to pretty much tell me how they justified doing that with what skill. Because if I thought, oh, well, okay, that's discreet, why do you want to use vigilance? And they had to justify it. And of course, like any game, if I felt it wasn't justified, I could veto it. But I didn't really find much cause because all the players were clever in their ability. Danny, who's a 17-year-old kid, he is John's son. He was very clever in using his abilities and being able to use them to his advantage. And he was learning the system very quickly, but he picked up pretty fast. And we got into a little bit of a discussion because I'm almost 51 and he's 17. If you come at me kind of snarky, I don't appreciate it, especially from a kid who's wet behind the ears, I feel, and can't even drive. And I did apologize to him because I was wrong, and I got snarky with him because he got kind of snotty with me. And that's because of familiarity. I'm like the uncle that comes over every weekend and plays with him. And so sometimes kids tend to forget respect, and I am there to politely remind them that I'm not going to put up with that. And so his parents, I give them kudos because they didn't say anything. They let him handle the situation. And and this is nothing to do with the game, but on a side note, I realized that I was wrong. I snapped at him. He did get snarky with me, and I snapped at him. And then I realized when we went back through the rules after and we realized that I was wrong. And so I apologized, but I did explain to him, I don't appreciate your tone. You're 17 years old. I am 50 plus. A little bit of respect is deserved and earned there, and I appreciate that you don't take that tone with me. And he apologized, much to his credit. So I did appreciate that. That's just proof that Danny and Dorothy are great parents and doing it right. And I think Danny is going to grow to be a fine young man. He already is, but he's going to be even better when he gets out there in the real world. And he's a heck of a role player. I've been gaming with him now for the last year, and I run a lot of different games. I often joke that I have ADD of gaming. And what was neat is to watch him go from this murder hobo character that he normally likes to play to, I fully expected him to take the barbarian mercenary. I really did, because that guy's a beatstick. And he chose the changeling thief, which was totally outside his comfort zone. And he role-played it really well. He did a great job, and he liked his character. He was like, I want to make a character, and I want to, and I was like, well, dude, he goes, I want to keep my character. We play again. I want to play this character. And I said, why not make your own? Make a changeling. You get most of those abilities that you had, but maybe you don't want to be a thief. Maybe you want to be a con artist. And I think that the character he played was the con artist. But I said, maybe you want to be a thief, or maybe you want to be an assassin. You know, it's your ability to change shape. You could totally do that. And so I think I left the hand-printed copy over there so that he could make his own character if he so decided to. And I'm just happy to see him grow as a player and take more challenging characters, because anybody can play a beat stick. It takes finesse to play a con artist, and he did a really good job. But enough of me babbling about my players, because they all did great. Everybody enjoyed it. I apologize if you hear my son in the background screaming. He's mommy's playing with him, and he's just being a little monster. So anyway, the long of the short is, it plays very well. It plays very fast. Minimal prep, I think, unless, obviously, any game that you run your own campaign or your own story in is going to have a lot of prep. I ran the intro adventure in here. It's 4 scenarios that are linked. I am going to read the second scenario and run that one for them next weekend, because I was going to go to OwlCon, but unfortunately I can't go. So we had canceled next week's gaming session, but I let everybody know last night that I can't go, and I would like to run this again if everybody's down for it. They were. So we're going to play this next weekend again. Hopefully we'll have Joshua back, and everything will be cool there. So anyway, my thoughts on Symbaroum is, it's definitely worth it. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll enjoy it. Pick it up. Let me know what you think about it. Let me know if you enjoyed it, and tell me all about it. I want to know, man. As always, hit that like and subscribe. Hit the bell. You'll be dinged when I dong, and that'll let you know when I post a new video. And as always, obviously like and subscribe. And remember, as always, peace and hair grease. And Mr. Mean says, be nice. Oh, I almost forgot. Today at noon Central Standard Time, I'm doing an interview with several of the folks over at Indie Press. It's Never Dark Enough, INDE. They are the fine makers of the role-playing game Shattered. So it's going to be a broadcast live. You'll be able to see it here on my channel. Tune in. I believe they're gonna post it over on their Discord channel as well. So check it out if you get a chance to watch it. Please hit a like and subscribe for that as well, and watch along with us. And as always, again, peace and hair grease, and be nice.